This podcast is brought to you by Amusement Warehouse Magazine, the industry's largest trade publication. We cover amusement parks, carnivals, fairs, festivals, history, safety columns. We really got it all when it comes to the amusement business. Only remaining print publication in the amusement industry on a regular basis. So if you're interested in what the amusement industry has to offer, subscribe today. You can subscribe by logging on to amusementwarehouse.com, carnivalwarehouse.com, or amusementparkwarehouse.com. Welcome to another edition of the Amusement Warehouse Podcast. Our guest today is Bob Johnson, former president and CEO is what you guys call yourselves, right? Of the Outdoor Amusement Business Association. Now sort of kind of retired, but he's still pretty active in the industry. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Ron. Nice to be with you.
Nice having you. You're in sunny Florida, I take it?
Sunny Florida, where you go to skin doctors every 6 months.
Yeah. It's better than freezing, I guess.
Yeah.
Better than freezing. So, it's like where to start with you. You get such a storied history, but you started your career in the park business, right? I mean, you came from the park business before you came to the carnival side of things.
Yes, I did. I started with Six Flags theme parks back in the late 70s in their corporate office. I was hired as their corporate HR guy, and it's a lot of fun. We had a good time for, about till the early 90s. I think I left in 92, right after, about 9 months after Time Warner bought the company. Most of the senior corporate guys bailed out at that time, and they offered us some really nice packages. And so I signed up for one, and said to my wife, well, where do you want to go? She said, well, we've never lived in Florida. Let's go to Florida. I said, okay, great. Let's go. And here we are.
Well, HR back then wasn't quite as complicated as now with the H-2B visa things and the
You're right.
foreign worker thing. So it was you just hired sort of regular people wanted jobs. I guess they wanted to work. So it was not quite as I don't want to belittle what you did, because I'm sure it was a difficult job then, but nowadays it must really be a nightmare to try and.
Well, like the seasonal employees that carnivals hire, parks hire thousands of seasonal employees. They use a J1 visa program, and they use the H-2B visa program. But back in the day, we had about 25 to 30,000 seasonal employees working in the parks. Now, each park HR person was responsible for hiring and training and orientating those employees. And we had high turnover, very high turnover, because we were dealing with young people, people that were anywhere from 16, in some cases 15, where we could hire younger people and state laws, and all the way up to young adults, 18, 19 years old. And they would come back every year. They had a great experience, and they enjoyed interfacing with the public.
How many parks did you have back then when you were working? Or what was it? I mean, obviously it changed over the years, but.
Well, today, the company's a whole different ballgame. But back then we had 12 parks and a couple of water parks. I think total of 12.
So it's still big. I mean, you must have been number 2 or number 3 in the industry back then, size-wise, right?
Well, I was fortunate to work for some great people, guys like Ned DeWitt, who was a Harvard MBA in the corporate office in LA. Ned has since passed away, but then worked with guys like Errol McCoy, who was a Six Flags guy back in the day, and a group VP, and then Larry Cochran, who recently passed away last year, and just some great people. And we had a great team, and started in LA, moved to Chicago, and then moved from Chicago to Dallas. We did a leveraged buyout, bought the company, and then we sold it to Time Warner, and we moved back east. So it took me almost 25 years to get back to my home state of New Jersey.
New Jersey, Jersey boys here originally.
Jersey boy, right?
What were you still there when didn't Six Flags kick around the idea of having a mobile or doing fairs or something like that for a little while?
Yes, we did, Ron. We did have some ideas along that line. We never really implemented them, but we would bring on. Disney came to us at that time, and they had a show they put in the park. I think it lasted one season in one or two parks, but that was about it. But they didn't understand the park business per se, but they did a great job, and I think our guests enjoyed it at the time.
But you were going to actually provide a midway for a fair at one time, wasn't there like a little thought about doing like something mobile that was?
Yeah, Ron, I do remember that. We did try that. I'm trying to think who. Yep, Michael Wood was involved with that. Maybe Frank Zychek at the time. I'm not sure, but I know Michael was involved. We took on a couple of other projects at the time. We would take on World's Fair projects and provide some rides at World's Fair entities. We also had some major projects, thanks to our parent company, like Bally Manufacturing. We had a museum type entertainment venue in the Inner Harbor in Baltimore. You might remember that. And we also took on Bally gaming operations. They're not their gambling, but their gaming operation. And we put some of those games into the parks. But there was always an idea to look at and to challenge us. And sometimes we took a bite at it. Other times we passed.
Yeah, that was always interesting, intriguing to see a park might get into the mobile business. Right. I'm sure everybody was fired, whoever came up with that idea.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the theme parks, the parkies as we call them, and the carnies, they were friends, but they were complete different businesses. Mm-hmm. Even though they were both seasonal in nature, they had different. Carnivals have to move and are mobile. The theme parks are fixed; they're fixed site parks, mm-hmm. and they don't have quite the challenges that carnivals do. I always used to say to them that the carnivals have a much bigger challenge to operate than fixed site parks.
Yeah, I had Corky and Debbie Powers on the podcast a few weeks ago, who they're now in the park business after having been in the mobile business for quite a while. And, I was thinking, at least at the fixed site with a park, you can concentrate on sort of running the business a little bit more. It's, the carnival with all the logistics and the changes and the moving from place to place and different people to answer to each week. You seem to always be chasing something. You almost never catch up. And they do concentrate on the business. They do a great job. It's just like you said, it's a lot more moving parts and a lot more uncertainty.
Yeah, another similarity, Ron, is the quest for greater attendance and more rides, more entertainment, and the parks and the carnivals are challenged every year to provide something new, exciting, and different. And whether it's a new ride or new food operation or a game operation, they're always challenged to bring something new, exciting, and different to get their audience back. And theme parks need repeat business, and that's why seasons passes were very lucrative to parks and still are. But the carnivals, when the carnival comes to town, and most smaller towns, as you know, you'll get a lot of people that come back year after year after year. It's exciting for them to come back to the county fair or state fair.
I guess one, it's almost like a push-pull strategy. With the park, you go to them. With the carnival, they come to you, in a sense.
Right.
And I guess the parks are doing a lot of things too with the theming that they're doing with the food festivals and wine festivals and Oktoberfest things and Christmas things where they're sort of theming, they're trying to make it a little bit different at different times of year, giving them people a reason to come more often or experience something new, like you're saying.
The Halloween fest, the Fright Fests in the parks are very, very popular. I mean, I think our first year out, we had a business plan to launch the Fright Fest in Six Flags parks. And, we were going to lose money the first couple of years. I think that toward the end of the first year, we made money. I mean, it was incredible. The popularity of, Halloween and Fright Fest. And, people like to be scared.
But, yeah, it's funny. So it's like almost, I think maybe everybody did, but they kind of stumbled into, I don't want to say stumbled in the sense that you thought it might be successful down the low, but you didn't have any idea. I don't think anybody does.
Right.
How popular Halloween it would become and how huge those events would become. It's really
and then Halloween, Fright Fest then segued into Holiday in the Park and Christmas time. And that's still popular. But I tell you, the Halloween and promotion and festival are much more popular than the Christmas events. But, it depends on the location and where you're at and what people are looking for.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the parks, I mean, you could do it in the warmer climates, but now it seems like almost, I mean, with some exceptions of really, really cold, but they're going year round. I know in like Virginia, Busch Gardens is year round now, and places that weren't have really all become year round parks. It's really changed the business, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Well, you take in a festivals, huge festivals, Ron, and many of them, but certainly Oktoberfest is one of the top festivals in the world and draws a tremendous amount of people. And as a result, you have many states and county fairs, state fairs doing Oktoberfest as well. So it's interesting. I mean, it's always fun and exciting to look at new attractions, something new, exciting, and different to draw people back year after year after year.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere about because parks, of all the things we cover, parks is probably my weakest area that I have the least experience in. But I was reading about what a big impact it is to introduce a new ride to a park. They try to do it every other year. Most parks are every so often. But I was reading about the uptick in business when you introduce a new ride was tremendous with a lot of the parks. So.
Oh, it really is. No question. You look at some of the smaller carnivals and smaller theme parks, and many of the larger carnival operations have many more rides, food, and games than a small theme park does. And the revenue is very good, as you know, when you get to like a Houston Livestock and Rodeo or New York State Fair or any of the big state fairs. Texas, of course, comes to mind. So, I think, the industry has to continue to reinvent itself. It can't stay stagnant. If it does, it's going to lose that local attendance population.
Yeah, I thought years ago when the Virginia State Fair lost its grounds and they were moving and then they were looking for somewhere new and they wound up moving not too far from King's Dominion. But I said, because at the time it wasn't really a year-round park. I said, what if they made a deal with King's Dominion and called it State Fair Days and ran for like the month of September and into October for a month, and they bring in the livestock and they bring in the judging and all the things and use the rides from King's Dominion. They wouldn't have to spend tens of millions on a new fairgrounds, and I thought that would be an intriguing solution, but nobody listens to me, so it doesn't matter.
You were always ahead of your time. I'm telling you, you were very innovative and still are, and with these podcasts even. But I remember we hired you one time to be a guest or on Sally Jesse Raphael. Remember that?
I do remember that. I was somewhere, like I was in Ohio or something,
Yeah.
and I had to go to New York, and I didn't have like a suit, so I had to like go buy a suit and get everything and go on the thing. I'll never forget that, because you knew when they were going over, unfortunate accidents that might have happened, and then I was the bag. I had to come in, and
That's
the poor girl lost her mother, and facts about certain things. Like one in particular, it turned out later that the person was intoxicated, and they were swinging the seat back and forth and wound up passing away. But what do you do in that situation when you're sitting up there on the stage and you've got to answer for it, because the poor girl's upset, or her mom had passed away, or whatever happened. But I remember saying, and it's true, that because I have kids and I worry when they do all kinds of things, but putting them on a ride is not one of the things I worry about day to day, because it's infinitesimally small, the chance. I mean, like I said, the people driving to the studio have a much larger chance of being hurt or killed in the car than they possibly did in a lifetime of riding amusement rides. So the industry does remain safe and secure, but it's like a plane. When something happens, it's a bad thing, but that doesn't mean it's not safer to fly than drive.
Unfortunately, it's catastrophic when an accident occurs.
Yeah.
Whether it's an airplane that goes down, unfortunately, or a theme park ride, car comes off the track. But it's rare. It's very rare. As you say, there are more people hurt every day riding back and forth to work than being injured at a carnival or a midway ride. But back in the day, I mean, the board wanted to do more outreach on the carnival safety programs, and IAPA did a great job back in the day, the theme park trade group, but they had a much bigger budget than we did, and could hire professional public relations people. But we were lucky to get you, Ron. Here's a guy, graduate of William and Mary, and well-educated. I know you didn't have to wear a suit every day, but you look good. You did a great job for the industry.
Well, thank you. That's very nice of you. That was a long time ago. Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
We made some facts. I mean, I thought it was interesting that, when you look at like hospital records, when they used to keep those things, like more people went to the hospital from playing pool than getting hurt on a carnival ride or things like that. I know at some point the mobile amusement industry went out of the database that they kept, and it was just fixed parks, but it was interesting. So when you went to Florida and you were the first time you retired,
I was going to say one of my jobs back then was to track statistics, injury statistics. The Consumer Product Safety Commission was involved, had oversight over the mobile industry, but not the fixed site parks. And when you start looking at the data, the carnival industry back then was safer than the fixed site parks from an accident standpoint. We finally got the CPSC to drop the data because it was plagued with error and miscalculations of the data. And they included many things like roller skating and things that really didn't apply, but they were all lumped in with the carnivals. And so that was our first concern. And then we said, look, the data is skewed. It's false. It's not correct. And they had a collection system where they would have certain number of hospitals they contracted with, as you recall, to give them data. And of course, the emergency rooms, people didn't know. Someone said, well, we got hurt roller skating. Well, it got ticked down, checked off to the carnival industry, the mobile industry. So, the data was flawed. Thank God they stopped doing that.
Yeah, I remember Sally Jessica Raphael said, like, push back on something. Yeah. And she's like, well, those are just statistics from emergency rooms. I was like, well, when you get hurt, where do you go? You go, most people don't have a private doctor, and they go to the emergency room when they get hurt. So of course that's where it's coming from.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
So when you were in Orlando or when you went to Florida, how did the opportunity come for you to step up and get into the carnival industry?
Yeah, that was interesting. I left Six Flags. My wife and I said, well, where do we want to live? We had lived in many states, California, Illinois twice, Dallas, and we said, well, let's go to Florida. We've never lived there. And so we moved down here. After I left Six Flags, I got involved in a company unrelated to the amusement industry. And it's thriving very well today in Iowa Falls, Iowa. And the company was Plastic Recycling of Iowa Falls. And we granulated scrap plastic, ran it through extruders, and made lumber profiles to build picnic tables, park benches, etc. We did a lot of boardwalks and planking. In fact, I have a dock in my boardwalk. My dock is built with recycled plastic lumber. So that business we started, it was in Boca Raton at the time. And then I left to join OABA, and the company went into bankruptcy, not because of me, but because of other factors at the time. But the CFO that I hired went out to Iowa Falls, Iowa, resurrected this company out of bankruptcy. And today it's doing close to, $13 million in sales every year. And it's a great business, and you feel good because you're doing something for the environment. So it's a neat business. But anyway, get off the track there for a bit. But then I got approached by John Graff, of all people, who was this president of the IAPA group, and Jerry Murphy called me and asked me if I'd be interested in looking at this carnival job. And I said, well, I know nothing about carnivals, but I'd certainly take a look at it. And went to Chicago, interviewed with the board of directors. I thought I would going in and interviewing with 1 or 2, 3 people, but I went into the whole board of directors was sitting there, each of them firing questions at me. It was a rather interesting interview, but
it must have been. Who was on the board at that time? You had a Hall of Fame board there.
What I thought you might ask that question, so I pulled out our old Midway marquees. And I came in back in the early 90s, Ron, and we had, guys like Andy Anderson and Milt Kaufman and, Billy Burr even on the board. Michael Wood's father was on the board. Tom Atkins and Bill Dillard, for gosh sakes. And of course, Dominic Vivona and the Murphy brothers, Jim and Jerry Murphy. Jimmy Drew was on the board. John Campy, there's a name you haven't thought about in a while. John Campy was on the board. And of course, other industry greats like Lloyd Hillegas and Hub Lors was on the board.
Wow.
Jimmy Straits, Jim Straits, and even Mr. Reithofer at the time. He had just gone off the board when I came in, but I got to know him very well. What an interesting man he was.
So you weren't really faced with too many strong personalities.
No. You talk about competition. I mean, they were cutthroat. But then, and Jean Claire was on the board. She was part of that. Guys, people like I can't see here. Let me put my glasses on this print. They keep printing these things so small. We had, here we go. Dick Janis was on the board then. Buddy Murphy,
I remember, actually.
Sam Johnston, Jeff Blomson, Danny Houston. Of course,
Claire Morton was on the board, I think, then, wasn't she? Yep.
Jackie Schweika and Don Degler, and so forth. So,
holy mackerel!
It was a world-class board as you look back, and these people were greats, and unfortunately, many have passed on, but they're terrific people, and today the board is a great board with a lot younger people. And at some point, just like the carnival families, they have to pass it on to the next generation. So today's board is a completely different, younger board with new ideas and new ways of doing things. So, but it was a great time. And, I managed to get Ron Burback on the board too, because he was out in the Northwest, didn't have too much to do with the OABA. The Northwest Showmen were pretty tight group out there, but I got Ron to come on the board, and John Hanshin and Andy Shaindings. And then the board decided that we needed a fair representative on the board. And that was fun because, we had a lot of good people at the time, and they still have a fair representative on the board. Jim Sinclair, I believe, is still on the board today. But back then, we were searching for somebody with good ethics and quality, and someone that could keep a secret, when we talk about, what fairs are doing at carnivals, etc. But, we came up with Wayne McCarry, and Wayne did a marvelous job as a director on the board, and became one of our Hall of Fame people as well. But and then we go on, and fella out in Yakima, Washington, Greg Stewart, joined after Wayne served 10 years. And our board members each served 10 years. I thought that was quite a bit of time, but on the other hand, we only had, 2 board meetings a year. It wasn't that strenuous, but we had a large board, and we had a large board because they were askers and givers. They were ones raising money for us. They were helping us promote the industry and find new members, and I call them our askers and givers, and they were terrific. I mean, they stepped up, and if they realized that the impact an issue had on the carnival business, they would step up and throw money at the issue, and a lot of money. These guys were great in terms of doing stuff like that.
See, when you did the interview, like, how did you prepare for it? And were you like surprised by some of the questions, and then what happened after?
Well, that's another interesting story. I was sitting there. They were interviewing 3 or 4 people there at the O'Hare Hotel there at the airport, and so it came time for my interview.
And the other guys that come out, were they bloody, or they look like they've been roughed up a little bit?
No.
Go in there.
But Jerry Murphy came out. God bless him. Jerry Murphy came out and said to me, he said, "Bob, now I know you're not going to be nervous. You're going to do very well." He said, "I'll tell you some of the things they're going to ask you." And so right up front, he trusted me to give me some ideas of what they would ask, and kind of help me prepare a little bit. And because you're always nervous, especially going into the whole board. I mean, there are 25 people sitting in the room. But and then they had appointed Billy Burr to ask the questions, which was interesting because they couldn't all ask questions. Many of them weren't sure what to ask, but Billy Burr did a great job at putting the questions together, and he was helped by some of the other senior board members too. But I mean, they all did a good job. And thank God they hired me. So
well, they needed I guess the person before you is kind of moved out, and they were looking for more professional leadership and somebody to take the OABA to the next level, sort of, kind of. And with your background and everything else, you're a great choice for them for so long. It's awesome what you're able to do. But it must have been. It was like a different, probably unlike any other board meeting you've been to, right?
Right. But I helped. Along with some other board people, we did a great job at helping to improve the image of the industry. Thinking back, I look back and say some of the great accomplishments we had was the Circle of Excellence program. and it's still going today with audits by independent third-party people who are ex-Disney and park people, and they go out and they do audits and they grade the carnival's operation and independently, and it was something. It needed some help, and I know Greg Chico has improved the program today. During COVID, of course, they did no audits, but nor did the industry operate. So it took, gave them time to readjust and to look at the program and say, how can we make it better? And we wanted to make sure that the fairs recognize the what we were doing and the impact it had on carnivals, and guys like Jim Tucker and of course Marla Calico were very helpful in helping us to streamline and give the program credit from a fair standpoint. So, when a fair went out to bid on a carnival midway, they would take that into consideration if a carnival is a member of the Circle of Excellence, of the OABA Circle of Excellence. But it was something. It wasn't the best, but it was something. In today's program, I'm sure, is even better. So, we were proud of that. I was very proud of that. And we did a lot of good promotions and advertising for that.
So when you were first hired, when you were offered the job and decided to take it, what did you see as some of the biggest challenges? What was your agenda when you first started there? What did you see that you need to do first?
Well, it took me a good year to really get used to how they operated and the mobility of the business, legislative challenges they had, the state and regulatory challenges they had. It took a good year for me to get to a point where we could really start probing and asking some questions to try to make and raise the bar in the industry. And I think many of them got it off the top of their head. I remember Guy Levitt coming into a board meeting in Cleveland when we had that trade show there. And the board back then practically laughed, said this would never work. It's never going to happen. And Guy and several other board members like Jeff Blomsness and Danny Houston and Gary Otterbacher at the time, who was on the board, said, we're going to pursue this and it's going to make it happen. And so they did. And thank God they stepped up. And because, as I said earlier, it's a great program and it helps raise the bar in the industry and helps the fairs too when they're bidding on carnivals.
How long did that IX Center trade show last? When did that start? I was just talking with somebody about that not too long ago. I couldn't remember
Eric German was the guy at the expo who started it. Mm-hmm. Great guy, still active today with the Ohio Showman, and very interesting guy. And he brought it to their board, to the expo's board, and said, yeah, this would be a great opportunity, along with the Bates brothers, especially Eric Bates, I think at the time, who was in that area, Cleveland and Ohio. And so they came up with the idea. We implemented it. It lasted for about 6 years, I think, Ron.
Was it 6 years?
And then we kind of, the manufacturers and suppliers said, whoa, we've got too many trade shows going on. And I can appreciate that. These guys are always involved and always trying to sell product, and they'll go any place. But we really didn't need the Cleveland trade show at that time. But I'll tell you, it was a trade show where you had very few lookers and looky-loos, as we call them, but we had people who were genuinely interested in buying rides and food trailers and game operations and so forth. And so, it was an interesting show, thanks to Eric German and his initiative, and many others out there in the Cleveland area. But it was a show you could fly into and fly back the same day, make a purchase, and fly back home. And only lasted for a couple of days. But right after that, we had, you have IAAPA, biggest trade show in the world, just about. And IAPA has now branched off to other countries with that trade show. But
and then the IFE convention right after that.
yeah, right after that, the IFE. That's right, the Fair Industry Convention. So yeah, there's just too much, and these guys are busy. They don't have hordes of management people they can delegate to, as you know. Many of them are the chief cook and bottle washer. They do everything. So mom takes care of the food or the office operations, and the kids take care of food, and dad is overseeing the whole operation. So, their time is limited. It's not like the parks where you have, layers of management people. You can afford to take time off and go and attend trade shows and educational seminars. But it was a good show. We enjoyed doing that.
The only drawback was it was Cleveland in the winter.
Yeah. Well, but remember, Ron, it was all inside. I mean, this building was a humongous building. I mean, they had a Ferris wheel that went up through the roof, and
you could just die walking from the airplane to the place, though, at minus 32 degrees.
Exactly. You didn't have to get a hotel room. You just come in and fly out the same day.
Yeah, no, I remember a little bit about it. What years were those? Do you remember what year that was?
Gosh, I'm thinking back.
Maybe like in the 90s sometime, right?
Yeah, I'd say late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. Very early 90s, more late 80s, I think. Really? Yeah. Okay. Wrong, but my memory's not as great as it was 10 years ago.
It didn't precede you though, right?
No.
Yeah, so it was 90s because you came like 90 some, like 90.
Yeah, I came in the early 90s, 92, 93 or thereabouts, when the board interviewed me, hired me the following January. But yeah, that show continued for 6 years, just about. And then it became, too much for the industry, for the manufacturers and suppliers. And we kind of, put it to bed. But it was a great idea, and a great venue because it was all indoors, climate control. Yeah. You didn't have to worry about snow, rain, or sleet or whatever, but it was good. It was a fun show.
And there's a strong Ohio contingent, especially amongst food manufacturers and things like that. It's I don't know why. I don't know why these things. I find it interesting that things crop up in certain areas, like so many food manufacturers in Ohio, and then obviously Florida has a lot of things. But at one time there was Pennsylvania had some wheel manufacturer right across the street from each other. So there's these little pockets of places that I'm sure there's a history behind why they crop up, but they do crop up.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And people like Gary Otterbacher and Eric Bates and other food people from the Ohio area. They have a huge Ohio Showman's contingent. They would all attend, and we'd have a casino night, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, we got to know a lot of people, and I think that helped our membership too at the time. But we decided, if we were going to get behind this thing, and thanks to Gary Otterbacher, Eric Bates, we would get behind it and make sure it happened, and make sure our board members were there because they were influential people in the industry. They were the buyers, big buyers.
Yeah, I think it was to get ahead of the sort of the buying cycle a little bit too, because by the time you wait for Gibtown, it was the beginning of the year, and the idea at least was to get in early. You could still order something and maybe get it in time for the season,
And back then, IAPA didn't have many portable rides.
No,
either.
That's true. Yeah.
So, they had a lot of bounce, inflatable devices, but not portable amusement rides. But that was the other thing. IAPA, John Graff said, "Why don't we create a midway experience, and so we can get more of the carnival people?" And IAPA started to do outdoor midway experience, which was fun. And that went on for a few years and still is very popular.
Yeah. I think prior to that, I don't know if the IAPA was as important a trade show as it is now, because they've done a pretty good job.
Right.
And a lot of guys from the carnival industry go to the
Yes, they
park
have.
show now, or whatever they call it.
They have very
We do
much.
a lot of things along with it.
Yeah,
So that's neat. So that was a big initiative to take on. And then
right.
when did the staffing become a big issue? Where along your timeline?
Well, again, I think it goes back to the 90s, early 90s, and guys like Jim Judkins, who got involved with the circus industry first with the H2B program. And then, of course, carnivals recognized Jim's talents and utilized Jim to help with the H2B visa program for the mobile industry. Which is a great program because it allowed us to hire people. We were guaranteed that, just about guaranteed that they would work for at least 8, 9, 10 months, and then they would go back home. And this was a legal visa program overseen by the Department of Labor. And 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 uh, and so it evolved over the years. It's become a lot more regulations or regulatory in nature than it used to be. Very simply, in the old days, I would call the top labor department in New York State guy and say, look, this carnival is operating these months. We need a X number of people. And we just would certify. It was a certification program that they needed help, and they used the OABA at the time to certify. Then, of course, the federal government got involved, and just about anything, as you know, when they get involved, it's going to get complicated. And today, it's a very challenging, very difficult program, and expensive too. It's not inexpensive. To bring in, you take, Powers Great American Midways, will bring in a few hundred H2B people. I mean, it's a challenge. We have to provide mobile, bunkhouses and food operations in many cases, and make sure these people are treated well because we want them to come back the following year. And many of them have been hired into full-time jobs with the carnival and have become American citizens, which is a great thing. It's not, today, I'm not sure, with all the people coming across the border, where those people are working. I know a lot of them work in housing where I live here with big housing developments going up. Many of them come here to work, but for construction jobs and hard labor. But we can't do that. We could not do that, and we have to be, when it comes to providing labor at fairs, you wouldn't want the labor department to come into a big fair and arrest all your workers because they were here illegally. I mean, that would be the worst thing for the industry. So, we made sure it was done properly with the H2B visa program, and thanks to guys like Jim Judkins and others who led the way, and the Murphy boys, they got involved early on. Straight shows did, many shows did, and it's been a terrific program for carnivals. That's their biggest challenge still today, as you know, Ron, is labor. So,
I think another one of your accomplishments or initiatives was building good relationships with the IAFE and the park, which you already had an existing relationship. But when I first came in, which was just a year before you or so, it was pretty adversarial between the OABA and the IAFE, and I think you really worked to build that bridge and work together, come together, and you do work together on a lot of issues.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I was fortunate because, I got to know Jim Tucker at the time with the IAFE and Dexter, I can't think of his last name, with the IAAM in Dallas there by the airport. Their office is there. But Dexter was a great guy and headed up the IAAM. It's now, I think their moniker has changed. It's now something else. But and then, of course, we had the great guy, Steve Schmader, who ran the festival organization in Boise, Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
Steve was a terrific guy, young guy. He came out of that music group, Ron. What were they? They were somewhat religious at the time. Up with People, was it? Or
Oh yeah, okay.
yeah, he was involved with that organization.
I didn't know that.
And then got into the festivals and was a great guy. He had a board all over the world, and he located in Boise, Idaho, and so we got together. We said, look, we all have common issues. Let's try to meet at one of the locations. I hosted a meeting in Orlando at that time. We met in the fair industry. I met at Jim's house at Jim's farm in Springfield, Missouri, and Dexter, we hosted a meeting. Dexter King hosted a meeting with the IAAM, and we all had an opportunity to talk about common issues, such labor issues, wages, benefits, regulatory issues that affected all the industries. So yeah, it was a great group of people, and over time people left or moved on, and it kind of disbanded. But yes, at that time it was a great group to be involved with, and we learned a lot from other industries that way.
Yeah, but building that relationship, especially with the IFE,
right,
was really important, because it was sort of adversarial, between the two groups to a certain extent.
Ron, I can't say enough about Jim Tucker. Jim was a tremendous executive director at the time. He became president and CEO, and I believe he still is their legal advisor. And Marla is retired now too, but Marla Calico, who replaced Jim. But Jim was a guy that fairs respected, and they would listen to Jim. And if Jim said, "Hey, this Circle of Excellence program is really good. We want to get behind it and promote it with your Carnival Midway," I mean, that meant a lot, and it happened. And I'm thinking of regulatory issues where they helped us, and to go to Washington and help lobby for the H-2B visa program. And that's another outcrop of the H-2B and labor, was the lobbying issue. And today they're lobbying to create their own legislation. I think it's called the CARE Act. And I know Greg Chico and the board is involved with that, with our lobbyist in DC. And Greg Hartley, who was the owner of the firm at the time, he has split off from another firm, and I believe we were one of his first clients back then. To
another Missouri guy.
Yeah, and
a lot of ties to Missouri.
And thanks to Frank Zychek, if I recall at the time.
Yeah, you're right.
Knowing him. So yeah, I mean, that lobbying firm is very successful today. They've merged with another firm, and they've done very, very well. And we've got a great lobbyist who's overseeing the CARE Act for the industry. So when we're trying to get fairs behind, they're trying to get fairs behind that too, to help lobby with us.
That's so much to do. It's really building those bridges, I think, was so important, though. It's great.
I look back and I'm amazed at all the things we did. Again, we had a great board of directors, but we had a very small staff. We'd have 3 people, maybe 4 or 5 people at a time, and we would mostly hire people like you and others to help when we had issues that we were not used to, and we needed experts, and people like you, Ron, and others came in to help us. And thank God we had the funding to do that. And as I always said, the Carnival people are askers and givers. And when they step up and they realize a cause that helps them and helps their families, they'll step up and give us a lot of money to get things done.
No question about it.
Like a political campaign.
It was and the board, changed so much over the years of who you were
Yep.
working and bringing along to do it. And like you say, it's kind of changed now. Generations have changed a little bit but
Yeah.
boy, when you first came on, that was some powerhouse board that you had to deal with and work with on that level.
Yeah, I mean, everybody warned me about this board, but I'll tell you, you get to know these guys, and they all have the same needs. They have the same issues. They may be fierce competitors, but they realize that a trade association like the OABA can help them get to where they want to go and help the next generation.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
Yep.
So what were some of your, you started that Young Executive Showman's
oh yes, you remember that
thing for a few years that worked. I thought that was a neat thing, honestly.
And again, here you were involved in that, Ron. I mean, you stepped up to help us. That was something that came out of the Cleveland board meetings.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Creating a young executive program. Somewhat similar to what the fair industry had. They have a young professional program as well. And they have, I think they still have a representative from the carnival, the mobile industry on their board, the young people. You were, I think, our first guy to help us promote that with the fairs.
Yeah, I think I was the first president, and Mike Chance, God rest his soul, was next after me. But it was fun, meeting other people that were the same age or whatever, and working on some initiatives. I think Jean Claire was real big in starting that too.
Jean was again a big promoter of that, and you're right, she was behind that. And our challenge is to not let you guys go out and get limousines and go to the bars, We want, that you were the ambassadors for the industry, and it worked. It really did work.
It was a cool thing.
A lot of those same people, Ron, came on our board later on. Young people that came on the board. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a good program, very good program.
So the challenges have changed. I mean, I know when you probably first came in, or when I first came in, insurance was a huge challenge, but I think that was starting to abate by the mid 90s. And then the labor issue came about, and that was a big, had a big impact. Well, what other things, when you look back, were really important for the OABA to accomplish for the industry?
Well, I think image and regulations continually challenge, state regulations and federal regulations continue to challenge the carnival owners. Again, they've done a great job with the resources that they have, and whether it's time or money, and to help us get involved, help go to Washington, help us lobby. Attend state regulatory safety meetings, safety boards that we created in some cases at the state level. I look back and I think, New York State had Corky Powers on their board, and others, and Guy Levitt and his family are involved in, Ben Pickett involved in regulatory issues for their carnival operations, but they realize that they can't be islands within themselves. They have to reach out and be visible and be involved and create relationship with regulatory folks throughout the country.
I'm just curious, when you came in, you were new to the industry. What surprised you the most, looking back now, about the industry? Like what was your, sort of misconception about it that you might have had, and how is it so much different than what it really was?
Well, again, coming from the park viewpoint, and I shouldn't say look down on carnival operators, but parks tend to be squeaky clean, and that's the image that they portray, and we were. I think when I thought about carnivals and I thought about taking this job, I said, well, what's it going to be like? How can I help them? How can I help improve the industry, their image? And it took time and took the right people and the right board, and I think our publications that we did, our magazine and Showtime Extra, were great vehicles to help promote what we were doing. And we served on many different state regulatory boards. But the challenge to me was I knew the carnival operators were good people. Most of them, I'd say, pretty good people, and came from good families. I mean, my God, they had people like Skurback family coming from the circus business in Europe. I mean, the 6-7 generations of Skurbacks. It's amazing. And these people, are good business people for the most part. They recognize, they've got to keep a good business to keep their competitive with others for fair contracts. And they realized that the OABA could help them. And I think that was the biggest thing I had, the biggest challenge. The reputation OABA had before I came was not that great, and unfortunately, there was a guy in my shoes or my seat at the time who was fired, and for a little over a year, they had nobody at the head of OABA, but they had a good staff and they had good people, and I started in Minnesota, and we were living in Florida at the time. I just moved to Florida after leaving Six Flags. And I told the board, I said, I'm not going to stay in Minnesota, but I will go out there and make sure I get to know the staff and understand what's going on. And I think we had a year and a half or so on our office lease out there. But, it ended up being a good experience because I got to know people who had been on the staff for several years, people like Al DeRusha, Jan Enrico, and others, and Lisa Fair. Remember Lisa Fair?
The first two I remember.
She was involved in the Young People's Organization. She was our youngest staff person, very good-looking young girl who was smart, and people liked her a lot. And so Lisa came to help us out and train the staff here in Florida when we first came down here.
When we first made the transition.
And Jan Enrico stayed on and worked from home as our financial person for years until we hired someone else. But in any business, you have to have people who are committed and honest and have a love and a passion for what they do. And
no question. Well, we're definitely passionate in this industry, that's for sure. Yeah. We've only got a couple minutes left, but I'm curious, do you think the future of the industry is bright or pessimistic given all the challenges that go on?
Oh, I think it's very bright. Sure, there's always going to be challenges. And, you look over the generations of families and the challenges carnivals have had over the years. And I remember it took, I don't know how many people to set up a Ferris wheel, but, 25, 30 people or something. I don't know. But, and the ride manufacturers realized that and started designing rides that could be erected with less labor, which I thought was really important. And that was a big, big thing. I think that as I look back, Ron, again, I enjoyed the experience. I learned a lot. I hope I was able to create programs that help them and legislatively help them as well, because I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the legislative aspect of my job.
And organizing it, you did a great job. So now that I mean, we don't usually break news here, but now that the IFE is looking for a new leader, is there any chance you're going to go on a third career here? Take over that organization?
I don't think so. I spent almost 45 years in the amusement industry, Ron. I enjoy my house. I enjoy the neighborhood. I enjoy boating and relaxing.
Pickleball.
I'm not a golfer, but I've taken up pickleball and I love
Yeah,
it.
that's what you said you were playing this morning. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. But it's hot, so we get out earlier in the in the summer months. We try to get out about 7:30 and play for a couple hours, and it's a great way to exercise and helps your hand-eye coordination, all those good things. So
Absolutely.
we love it here. I don't know that I'll stay here forever, but I think that it's a good place for Alex and I. My wife and I she just had her left hip replaced, and she's doing very well. But
good.
It's a great neighborhood. We got a lot of mixture of older and younger people, and Lennar is still building homes here. So
if anybody wants to move in, well, I really appreciate you coming on. Coming out of retirement, there's a million things we could talk about, but we covered quite a few. I know you got the SLA stuff. But thank you so much for doing it, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Ron, thank you. I enjoyed the experience, and I hope people like it.
Of course they'll like it. What's not like to like? You did a great guest. Thanks, Bob.
Good enough. Thanks, Ron.
This podcast is brought to you by Innovative Ticketing is the ticketing source made for the amusement industry. Our staff of professionals can guide you through your setup, assist with customer service, even on the weekends when you most need it, and help increase your sales through promotions that work. Innovative Ticketing is the ticketing source made for the amusement industry. Sign up today at innovativeticketing.com.